Welcome back. You're watching News Center. India is absolutely a long-term bet for investors. That's the word coming in from Knight Frank Global Chair William Beardmore-Gray. Speaking to Ritu Singh, Gray said India and Australia are the two biggest markets for the company outside of Britain, while Dubai is one of the hottest property markets.
Our two biggest markets outside of the UK are India and Australia. Yeah. Probably the one which is growing fastest at the moment is the Middle East. But what we're really excited about India, and we made a big commitment to India 10 years ago, and it's had its ups and downs, absolutely. But we're now a business which is returning as good a margins as anywhere else in the world, for the obvious reason that it is a market of huge interest to the global business community, not just for GCC's occupation, but the market's changed significantly to become full-service manufacturing economy as well, producing goods for everywhere around the world. Yeah,
we'll get to the specifics in India in just a bit, but globally, with how the macroeconomic environment has been, we've seen a period of high uncertainty, whether that is geopolitical or financial. Now the interest rate cycle is starting to turn, and yet rates have stayed higher for longer in many large economies. How has all of that impacted the property markets, and how do you think now, with the cycle starting to turn, inflation starting to come down, what does the outlook look like for the coming year or so?
I think the important thing you say there is starting, and we were hoping that this start and perhaps acceleration would have happened 12 months ago. And of course, around the world, the cost of borrowing has been such which has made it really difficult for investors to transact and to meet some of the needs of those looking at property. So we have a shortage of high quality product across all sectors around the world at the moment. When you hear people talk about sheds, beds, eds and meds, whether it's warehousing, whether it's living sectors, whether it's offices, that shortage of accommodation around the world we're really seeing now. And that should help us as values rise, because shortage of accommodation, when there is demand, means that rents start to move up. And we're beginning to see that happen. And therefore, those investors at the moment who are really keen to get moving, we're beginning to see private equity come back into the market. We think that definitely 2025 is going to be a much better year for us.
What are the hottest markets right now? I mean, what are investors most curious about? What are the fastest growing markets? You spoke about Middle East for Knight Frank, but overall, what do you get the most questions about? Which market would that be?
The question I have been asked more than any other in the last 12 to 18 months is, talk to me about India. And that is fascinating how these markets change. Clearly, the market in India has been strong for a number of years now.
You could list down, the top 5 fastest growing residential markets. What would those be? And then, of course, commercial ones.
I wouldn't say that there are any residential markets that are moving particularly quickly at the moment, outside of the Middle East. Dubai clearly is incredibly strong at the moment, and we expect it to remain that way for the next couple of years. We've seen, I don't want to talk about the negatives rather than the positives, but definitely high-end residential in some markets. If I look at the UK, for example, for the last 9 months has been significantly affected by people waiting to see the outcome of the budget. But where we have seen significant growth is in those core markets. And core markets in London have been incredibly strong. If I was going to say, where are we seeing most of the cross-border capital landing at the moment? That's landing in Europe. And London is probably one of the first choices for that capital.
All right. On the commercial side as well, or is this largely luxury residential?
No, I mean, look, on the commercial side, London has always been attractive, that sort of cross-border capital. We're starting to see Europe, all over the world, we're starting to see markets move, but it is very sluggish. And we've seen some significant office transactions in Australia in the last 6 to 9 months, which is encouraging. The strongest markets at the moment, or the fastest growing markets, living sectors, industrial and logistics, data centres, we're seeing significant growth in those markets.
I know it's hard to generalize, but if I were to ask you which way property prices are moving from an investor point of view, what would you say are some of the biggest global trends that are going to shape what happens with the real estate markets globally?
Well, I'm going back to what I said earlier about shortage. When
demand and supply.
In those key markets such as offices, residential, industrial and logistics. So those three, I suppose, are the ones which most of our investor clients are looking at. And that would suggest that, whilst we saw a massive increase in or reduction in yields on warehousing, that is going to continue to be of interest as the power of online retail continues. Offices outside of the US, the trend is for people to go back to the office. We're still in a cycle where people are working out how they are going to deal with the office within their operation. But without doubt, the majority of those who require an office want their people in it for the majority of the time, because the productivity is going to be dealt with through face-to-face communication.